The Pope just released a 200-page document calling artificial intelligence a threat to human dignity. And Anthropic's co-founder was sitting in the front row. This is not a joke. This is not a meme. The leader of 1.4 billion Catholics just dropped the most detailed moral critique of AI that any major institution has ever published. And today we are going to break down what it actually says, why it matters, and why one of the people building the most powerful AI systems on the planet flew to Rome to hear it in person. 4 days ago, on March 25th, Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope in history, personally presented a new encyclical called Magnifica Humanitas. An encyclical, if you're not familiar, is basically the most important type of document a pope can write. It's a letter to the entire Catholic world laying out official church teaching. And this one is the entirely about artificial intelligence. That has never happened before. In 2000 years of Catholic history, no pope has ever dedicated an encyclical to a single technology. Until now. Here is the detail that turns this from a religious story into a tech story. The Pope didn't just pick a random date. He signed a Magnifica Humanitas on May 15th, the exact 135th anniversary of another encyclical called Rerum Novarum, and then presented it publicly 10 days later. That was written in 1895 by Pope Leo XIII. Yes, another Leo, and it was about workers' rights during the Industrial Revolution. Back then, machines were replacing craftsmen, factories were exploiting labor, and the church stepped in to say you cannot treat people like inputs in a production process. That document shaped a century of labor law. And now Pope Leo XIV is saying the same thing about AI. History is rhyming, and the Vatican wants you to hear it. So, what does Magnifica Humanitas actually say? Let me give you the four big arguments. First, and this one that's going to make Silicon Valley uncomfortable. Don't optimize humans. The Pope argues that the entire mindset of the tech industry, this idea that everything can be measured, improved, and optimized, is fundamentally incompatible with human dignity. Aging is not a bug. Suffering is not an insufficiency. Vulnerability is not a design flaw. These are features of being human. The encyclical pushes back hard against the transhumanist vision where we are all just imperfect machines waiting for an upgrade. The Pope is saying no. You are not a system to be optimized, you are a person. Second, AI weapons. The Pope calls for absolute human control over any decision to take a life. No autonomous weapons, no algorithms deciding who lives and who dies. This aligns with conversations already happening at the UN. But there is a difference between a policy paper and the moral authority of the Catholic Church, telling 1.4 billion people that killer robots are a sin. Third, the Pope introduces this phrase, forced inactivity. That's what he calls the result of automation eliminating meaningful work. Not just unemployment in the economic sense, but the loss of purpose, the loss of contribution, the loss of the dignity that comes from doing something that matters. This is straight out of the Return Novarum playbook in 1891. It was factories replacing craftsmen. In 2026, it's algorithms replacing knowledge workers. The pattern is the same. Fourth, automation inequality. The benefits of AI flow upward to the people who own the system. The costs: job displacement, surveillance, loss of autonomy fall on the people who can least afford it. Pope is making a distributional argument here. Who wins and who loses from this technology? And is anyone asking the losers what they think? Now, here is the part that caught everyone's off guard. Buried inside this AI document is a formal apology. Pope Leo XIV used Magnifica Humanitas to apologize for the Catholic Church's historical complicity in the slavery. And the framing is deliberate. He is saying we failed to defend human dignity once before, when people were treated as property. We cannot fail again when people are being treated as data points. The slavery apology isn't a side note, it's the moral foundation of the entire argument. The church is admitting its own history of dehumanization. The church is admitting its own history of dehumanization to earn the credibility to speak about new one. And that brings us to the most fascinating detail of this whole story. Christopher Olah, co-founder of Anthropic, the company that builds Claude, one of the most advanced AI systems in the world, was in the audience at the Vatican when Pope presented this encyclical. Think about that for a second. Anthropic has built its entire brand around being safety first AI company. They talk about AI risks more than anyone in industry. And now their co-founder is sitting in the Vatican listening to the Pope say that the technology his company builds threatens human dignity. Is this a PR move? Maybe, but it also signals something real. At least some of the people actually building these systems are willing to sit in a room and hear moral case against what they are doing. That's not nothing. But let's be honest about the tension here. There is an obvious irony. The most ancient institution in the Western civilization, 2000 years old, headquartered in a literal city state, is trying to regulate the newest technology on the planet. The Catholic Church still hasn't fully resolved its own institutional failures, abuse scandals, slow reform, and now it's asking Silicon Valley to protect human dignity. The messenger complicates the message, and then there is the enforcement problem. An encyclical is not a law. The Pope has no regulatory power over OpenAI. He can't fine Google. He can't shut down a training run. Rerum Novarum didn't pass labor laws either, but it took decades to influence policy. Can the church afford to wait decades on AI when the technology moves this fast? So let me leave you with these two futures. Future one: religious institutions fill the gap that government have left. The EU has regulations, the US has executive orders, but nobody has articulated why humans matter in the age of AI with the moral clarity of 200-page encyclical. Maybe the Pope doesn't need enforcement power. Maybe he just needs shift the conversation. Rerum Novarum didn't have enforcement power either, and it shaped a century labor rights. Future 2. Tech companies send respectful press statement, maybe invite the Pope to a summit, and then change absolutely nothing. The encyclical becomes a footnote cited by ethicists, ignored by engineers, and the Church joins the EU, the UN, and every other institution that published a very concerned report while technology raced ahead without them. Here's my take. The fact that we are even talking about papal encyclical on artificial intelligence tells you everything you need to know about where we are right now. When the oldest institution in Western civilization feels need to weigh in your technology, maybe it's worth pausing to listen. Even if you are not Catholic, even if you don't agree with a single word, because the Pope just asked a question that nobody in Silicon Valley wants to answer. What if humans aren't meant to be optimized? Let me know in the comments which future you think is more likely. Subscribe if you want to keep up with what's actually happening in AI, not just the product launches, but the power moves and the moral arguments behind them. I'll see you in the next one.